So Jaron Boots Ennis will be taking on his new mandatory by the WBA in Shakhram Giyasov, right? That's no surprise. We knew that was going to happen. But what did surprise me was the other two people that popped up in the rankings.
Hey, yo, what the fuck?
Oh, and by the way, they'll be fighting for a title next.
If I tell you I'm good, probably you will say I'm boasting. If I tell you I'm no good, you know one line.
Yo, what's good, Boxing Talk family? It's your boy, Dr. Boxing Talk, back for another YouTube video. Banger, man. Yes, sir. Yes, man. I don't know what time it is. The doctor's in the house, man. So check this out. This is crazy, right? So we have Jaron Boots Ennis at 147, right? He's a newly crowned unified champion by beating a Ennis on April 12th in Atlantic City, right? You know, Jaron Boots Ennis represented the IBF champion and Ennis represented the WBA champion. So we had American fighter versus the Lithuanian fighter, and the Ring Magazine belt was on the line as well, since they were both ranked #1 and #2, Jaron Boots Ennis and Stanionis respectively in the Ring Magazine. So the winner took the belt, and of course Jaron Boots Ennis obviously was a winner, so now he's a belt holder for the WBA belt, the IBF belt, and the Ring Magazine belt. Cool. Now in order for that fight to come into fruition, right, and to actually happen, some things had to happen, right? And one of those key components was that Shakhram Giyasov, who was a WBA mandatory for Stanionis, he had to take step aside money. And with him doing that, you know, with him also being a matchroom fighter, just like Jaron Boots Ennis, which I'm sure that part helped smooth out that situation right there, and that negotiation and that agreement, right? Now that that has happened, right, he is going to inherit that mandatory that Stanionis had, he being Jaron Boots Ennis. So now it's no shocker if you paid attention to this channel. We keep you up to date with the things that's going on. Yeah. You know, it was no shocker that Shakhram Giyasov is going to be up next to fight the winner. We already knew that, right? And that's what's happening. But what we didn't know is that the fight on May 2nd with Ryan Garcia versus Rolly Romero, who never fought at 147-pound division before, is suddenly been declared as a regular title belt, the WBA world title belt to be specific, by President Gilberto Mendoza of the WBA. Huh? This is crazy, man. Ryan Garcia and Rolly Romero have never fought in the 147-pound division, and I feel like this move is not just disrespectful to just the other boxers in the sanctioning body in the WBA themselves that's been paying sanctioning fees, but it's also disrespectful to have this suddenly happen for Jaron Boots Ennis, because now this just feels a little suspicious, right? We already knew about Shakhram Giyasov, who I said was featured on the undercard of Stanionis and Boots, right? He successfully beat Franco Ocampo, and he beat him by stoppage in the 4th round, right? So him and Jaron Boots Ennis both got a stoppage that night, and it's cool, right? It gives you perfect buildup for that fight to happen next. However, in the scenario that fight doesn't happen and they want to pursue a unification, well, if that unification doesn't happen quickly, we could potentially see some type of shady business going on behalf of the WBA, trying to force the winner of Ryan Garcia and Rolly Romero ranked #2 and Ryan Garcia ranked #3 in the WBA at 147 suddenly, right? We could see them try to maneuver themselves from a regular champion to kind of push up and get elevated to a full champion if Boots doesn't want to comply and fight them next. You know, it's just odd that he essentially has 2 mandatories from the same sanctioning body. That's crazy, right? So after he beats, if he beats Shakhram Giyasov, because it's not a given, Shakhram Giyasov is a good fighter. Big salute to the Giyasov family, especially with the recent loss of their young daughter. Our hearts go out to them, you know. But if he fights the #1 ranked guy, is Shakhram Giyasov, and let's say if he beats him, or it doesn't even matter who wins, but then the winner of that will also have to turn around and fight the regular champion in the winner of Ryan Garcia and Rolly Romero. This is clearly a move for money, because a lot of us anticipate Ryan Garcia to beat Rolly Romero, and a lot of us anticipate Jaron Boots Ennis to beat Shakhram Giyasov. So they want to maneuver themselves in a situation to where they get Jaron Boots Ennis versus Ryan Garcia, which would be a highly anticipated fight due to popularity alone, you know. And of course, these guys, you know, WBA President Gilberto Mendoza, they recognize that as well, which is why they're moving in this way, you know, for more money in their pocket, you know. And it just brings a lot of how could I say it? It makes you feel like you cannot trust them, which I don't know why you would feel like you could trust them anyway, but it just brings a shade of dishonesty and a shade of suspicion to these champions, which we should be able to hold these champions in a positive light, you know, and it's not the fighter's fault, but it's a sanctioned bodies that's doing it once again, and they're striking once again with a shady business, man. And I think that this is a bad look for boxing, in my personal opinion. But let's say the fight does happen, and let's say Jaron Boots Ennis, if let's just keep him since he's a champion, right? Let's say he beats Shakhram Giyasov, and then Ryan Garcia beats Rolly Romero, or if Devin Haney loses to Jose Carlos Ramirez, or he wins and somehow for some odd reason they don't go straight into a rematch between Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia, well, insert Turki Al-Sheikh. Turki Al-Sheikh just recently, as of yesterday, just asked the boxing community if they would like to see Boots versus Tio. So of course he's pushing for that fight, and you know Turki and Eddie Hearn are like this, so you cannot convince me that it wouldn't be far-fetched for Turki Al-Sheikh to try to persuade Boots to fight Tio next in the scenario that Tio beats Arnold Barbosa. But let's say he does go with Turk, where that's where the money is, right? That's the most lucrative deals, usually with Turki Al-Sheikh. So let's say he does that, right? Well, then the WBA might try to say, hey man, if you don't fight our guy, then, you know, you might get pushed up out of there, and there goes his dreams for his pursuit or undisputed. Or, you know, with Conor Benn, let's say no matter how that fight goes, we know Conor Benn is at 147 too, and he's probably going to come back down to 147. Well, you know that if you've been paying attention, that Jaron Boots Ennis has been trying to be coerced by everybody to go to 154, and he's been kind of shot down and being persuaded not to go for undisputed at 147, even though that's what he wants to do, and he's been making the weight, right? He's the IBF champion. I know people say, oh, he looks drained. It doesn't matter. When you're the IBF champion, they impose their own rehydration clause. They implement their own rehydration clause or rehydration limit. So if you can make weight as an IBF champion, then you're pretty much secured and solid at that weight. You know what I'm saying? So you don't have to worry about I don't even really understand why we question the ability of the champions at IBF to make weight when they are under the most stringent weight policies in all of boxing when it compared to the 4 sanctioning bodies. The other 3 sanctioning bodies, you know, compared to the other 3 sanctioning bodies, the IBF is the only one that implements their own rehydration clause. So I'm just saying it looks a little shady. I'm not saying this is going to happen, because of course the WBA works hand in hand with Riyadh season as well. So there's ways that you can maneuver around it, but it just looks a little suspicious, man. And I can't help but have my spider sense and my hood sense tingling, you know what I'm saying? And then not to mention that, as you know, the WBA, or maybe you don't know, but the WBA, they already gave Jaron Boots Ennis a time limit, right? Which of course, after you win your title and they order a mandatory, you have 120 days or 4 months to comply. So basically he has to fight 4 months after beating El Montestadiones on April 12th. Jaron Boots Ennis has to fight Shakhram Giyasov by them. So he has 120 days or 4 months to decide essentially if he's going to fight the mandatory or be stripped. And then I just feel like there's going to be some type of stipulation to where the winner of that fight will have to fight the winner of Ryan Garcia, Rolly Romero, or they might risk being stripped again. So like I said, it just seems like, you know, not to mention with Brian Norman being busy with Jin Sasaki, which I think is okay. According to rumors, it's not finalized yet, but Jin Sasaki could be Brian Norman could be defending against Jin Sasaki. And we know Mario Barrios, the other champion at 147 for the WBC, he is occupied with potentially fighting Manny Pacquiao on a comeback. So there's a lot of things that's going on, man. I think that this just looks a little shady, and everything may move forward amicably and everything may be all right, but this is given the opportunity for us to question some things, you know, especially with the fact that Rolly Romero is number 2 at the 147-pound division of the WBA. Ryan Garcia is ranked number 3, and all of a sudden they're fighting for a regular belt suddenly as of yesterday. That's kind of crazy, man. So we are a little suspicious. Y'all let me know what y'all think about that. But don't forget to hit that like button at the same time. But also, even above that, most importantly, remember, with God, we can do anything. Without God, we're nothing. Y'all let me know what y'all think about that in the comments. And that's it for me, man. The doctor's out. Peace. From the hood to college, both worlds they had to meet. 6 degrees between us, so cold, we're about to freeze. But we're Florida boys, hot takes, we bring the heat. We're moving the culture, the engineers to the streets.